Hello and welcome to episode 11 of my podcast, Refining Rhetoric. I'm your host, Robert Bortons. In today's episode, I'll be interviewing the founder of the Institute for Excellence in Writing, Andrew Pudewa. Andrew is hilarious and insightful, so talking to him was a lot of fun. After that, I'll do a brief recap and unpack a few of the tools of learning from our interview, and then in current events, we'll talk about Christians and voting. And finally, Will McCurry will dive into having a diversified crypto portfolio. Let's get started.
Classical Conversation Studios presents Refining Rhetoric with CEO Robert Bortons, a podcast where faith, business, politics, and classical education meet. Join us as we use the classical tools of rhetoric to seek truth in every arena of life.
Andrew Pudewa is the founder of the Institute for Excellence in Writing and a longtime friend of ours here at Classical Conversations. His curriculum has influenced the lives of countless people, including my own, and we are excited to talk to him today about his work and the significance of literacy in America. Andrew, welcome.
Good to be with you, Robert.
Andrew, for those who might be unfamiliar with you, just give us a little background on yourself and your work.
Sure. Yeah, I have 7 grown children, all of whom were homeschooled, more or less. We have lived in Idaho, California, and currently we live in eastern Oklahoma in the Tulsa area. I am up to 15 grandchildren now.
That's awesome.
And so I will tell you, that's the best thing about getting old is grandchildren. We have our little company, Institute for Excellence in Writing. I founded it in 1995. And it was kind of just a side gig to do a few seminars here and there to help me afford to be a violin teacher. But by 99, it was going pretty well. And when we moved to California, I quit teaching music and went full-time into IEW. And it's hard to believe it's been 22 years since then. And we've had a good long run and things just keep getting better. And of course, our partnership with Classical Conversations has been a super and huge blessing for me personally, for our business, and for so many kids I meet all over the place. I will tell you, Robert, whenever I'm at a homeschool convention, which I was just last week, and whenever I get like 3 or 4 moms who walk up to me in a group and they're all just smiling and happy, it's a 98% chance it's a CC community group of moms. And so it's just been wonderful there. So I don't know what else there is about me. All of my children who have children are homeschooling. One of them was part of a CC community in Pennsylvania. So we're starting to see on my side now the second generation, as you are in your family.
Yeah, it's awesome, and so just being homeschooled doesn't mean I know all the tricks of the trade of being a homeschool parent, but it's cool to see the other side. What really lit the proverbial literacy fire in you in those early years? And have you always been passionate about writing? I heard you've been passionate about music as well.
Yeah, I think what really happened, I was trained as a violin teacher. I've studied with Dr. Suzuki of the Suzuki method in Japan, lived there for 3 years and came back, and I'm teaching Suzuki violin and kinder music and a few other things to try to make ends meet. And I also was associated with a small school in Montana, and this whole faculty of this school decided to go to Canada and take this course called the Blended Sound Site Program of Learning. So we're like, okay, never been there. Let's go and find out. And that's where I met Dr. Webster. I learned the structure and style approach to teaching writing. And it wasn't just a couple days into that. I just thought, wow, this is a Suzuki method approach to teaching English composition. I can do this. This is concrete. I understand the principles. And I had never really liked writing, especially creative writing, as a kid, because I never really knew what to write. And so I kind of had that blank brain, blank paper, tears dripping on the paper kind of frustration. And when I saw Dr. Webster's method of starting with source text and checklists and doing the kind of the same thing again and again until it was easy and there's a level of mastery, I thought, wow, this is exactly what I would like to do if I were going to teach writing. And I happened to be working for the school and they needed someone to teach 7th and 8th grade English. So that was one of my many part-time gigs in addition to the music. And it just worked so well. It surprised me, surprised the kids, surprised the parents. It was just almost unbelievably good. And so the next summer I went up and took that same 12-day teacher training course in Canada again. And then the third year I went up, they said, well, if you're going to keep coming back up here, you should probably just join our staff and help us do this. So that began my association. So I don't think I came into it with this passion for helping people write better so much as I was thinking, this is just a super good methodology and I can teach this. And then the side effect was I started to write better and everyone else started to write better. And now it's, of course, proof in the pudding.
Yeah, of course, it makes my engineering heart flutter with joy to hear checklists and the process. I know, I was homeschooled by 2 engineers and not necessarily the best writing, but I did actually get to enjoy writing, and classical conversations, taking challenge helped me. But it wasn't until I was 26 years old and sat into essentials class for the first time and got to really see the IEW method. And I was like, man, I learned more, going back in as at 26 years old, sitting with a bunch of 5th graders than I did in any of my college English classes.
And that's probably the most common thing I get from parents who do our teacher training course, or they start their kids in essentials and they do 2 or 3 years and then they meet me. The most common statement I get is, I wish I had had this when I was in high school or college. It would have made my life so much better.
Yeah. Yes. I'm still working on my writing, but and we have a great team of editors here, so they make me look good, but I've noticeably improved prior to being able to sit down and take that course. What effect do you see on our country, this poor writing ability, this ability that seems to be lacking in our culture today? Like, what effects do you see that having on the United States and our freedom?
Well, I mean, there's so many ways to think about that. You could think about the kind of ridiculous things that people write and get published, and you see things getting posted here and there. But there's also, I would say, a subculture of really skilled kind of alternative writers and journalists, most of whom have got kicked off main platforms or resigned from the New York Times. Now they're on Substack. Mm-hmm. So there is very good writing. And I guess my concern is in the schools. And when we look at, for instance, a statistic I heard the other day on a podcast was over 70% of the school children in Maryland state are below proficient in both math and English language arts.
And I think that's probably across the United States.
Yeah, and I don't know that Maryland is special. Obviously, a majority are probably in the Baltimore school district, and it has problems like any large school district. But I fear that, as you listen to what's going on in so many of the schools, this emphasis on basic skills is just fading so quickly. And then with kids doing distance learning and schools shut down and the 2-year loss there, I guess my biggest concern is what happens when all these kids who are 10, 11, 12, 14 years old, they really don't read and understand what they read the way kids that age did even 20 years ago, let alone, 50 years ago. Mm-hmm. What is that going to mean for our whole society when they're grown up in their 20s and 30s? Are we going to have to import literate people and import talent to keep our infrastructure running? And yet, those people are, they're going to be getting so much of their information about life from their Twitter feeds and Instagram memes. How are we going to survive this?
Well, I remember, I remember studying Egyptian hieroglyphics a little bit, growing up. Of course, those are all image based. So maybe we'll go back to that just through memes, right? We'll just communicate solely from movie memes.
That would be a tragedy. But one of the things that gives me a lot of hope is to see so many parents who are really excited about, let's read the good and great books with our kids together, and let's pursue a plan of developing really good basic skills upon which a better education can be built. And of course, that's CC in a nutshell, is the recovery, if you will, of, I wouldn't even say classical education, almost like the recovery of real education.
Mm-hmm.
And then, other people who are not yet part of the CC world, they're seeing a need. There's definitely a concern. Of course, statistics show that a whole lot of those parents who became accidental homeschoolers or COVID schoolers or unintentional homeschool, whatever you want to call it, a lot of them are continuing on now because they have had a window into seeing better what the schools are doing or failing to do, and that it's not impossible to accomplish a lot with your own kids at home in a relatively reasonable amount of time.
Yeah. So what would you say to someone who is feeling overwhelmed by the idea of learning or teaching to write with excellence? Because we haven't necessarily grown up in a system that's that way.
Yeah, well, it's never too late to learn something. I think your mom always kind of inspires me. She's always like got some new project or idea or thing. A lot of my friends, we keep very active. I learned just by teaching, right? So I started teaching Latin. I didn't know anything, and I thought this would be really good. So I got a bunch of kids and added them to my youngest kids and started a little class, and I didn't know what I was doing. But after 6 years, I look back and think, wow, I learned so much about grammar and language and structure and vocabulary and history and Western culture and all these things that as an adult were just not really on my screen in terms of Latin. And I'm so grateful I did. So, writing is the same way. And, I think any parent who starts teaching their children starts to learn all those things that they either were kind of fuzzy on or learned it and forgot it or never heard about it. And of course, there's that kind of best kept secret. One of the real reasons we homeschool is so we can get the education we never got.
That's so true. And just staying a few days ahead of your students, or even, modeling humility and saying, hey, I don't know this either, but let's learn how to look it up together, and teaching the kids really the skills of learning, which are so important. And one of the reasons that we have this podcast, we hear success stories from people that use your program all the time. What are some ones that really stand out to you, or things that you hear that you never thought you would hear about those who've embraced IEW?
Yeah, I wish I could go, read you 20 examples here, but to summarize in the interest of time, I think there's probably two categories of what people tell me that I find most delightful. One is when they say, my kid couldn't string two sentences together. He hated writing. He cried every time we tried to do it. It was so awful. I almost quit homeschooling because of writing. And then we found your program. We got into essentials or something. And 3 years later, it's his favorite thing to do. And so that kind of attitude transformation, and I understand exactly how the kid got there and how it changed. But it's always nice to just let a mom kind of tell the story. And sometimes, little tears will form on the edge of her eyes. I'm going to cry, it's so important. So that would be one category. And then the other one is, I really wasn't sure that this homeschooling thing was going to prepare my kid for, college or real world, real life. And then, he went off and maybe as a dual enrollment thing, took an English class at a community college or went off to school and took English classes or had to write papers. And he was almost surprised, or she, it could be a girl, that he got an A. And then the professor said, wow, this is really good. I don't meet a lot of kids who write this well. Where'd you learn to do it? My mom taught me. So this, and I'm sure you get stories of this all the time. Kids who go off to a college and just, if they can read decently well and write grammatically correctly with logic, they perform very, very well, usually at the top of the class. And sometimes that's a pleasant surprise to the parents who were still kind of nervous about, did we do everything right in the homeschool so this would happen? And so that kind of fulfillment of the years of working hard and the little doubts in the corner of the mind,
Yeah, I think college professors are like the evil nemesis of homeschool parents. Like, what is the college professor going to think of my kids that I just spent all this time and effort? And of course, we hear great stories. One of my favorite stories is a student that had taken IAW in our Essentials program and had gone through Challenge. And she was in her English course as a freshman at college. And professor was just disgusted by all the papers. And he said, hey, I need all the students to come talk about your papers. And of course, she was the first one to sign up. And she walks through the door and the professor's like, why are you here? She goes, well, you told us, you wanted to talk to us about our papers. And he's like, not yours. Yours was great. Actually, he's like, well, actually, while you're here, if I just give you an A in this class, will you TA and help me grade these papers, help your students get caught up? So, I mean, not that all the students are that way, but it's just the parents do an amazing job. And when you have a system that works so well, I mean, it's just amazing. And when you pair those things together, but it's a new way of thinking and learning. And, I think parents who stick with it, see those blessings and see the fruit of their work.
And I met a number of college professors who also are homeschooling their kids.
Yeah.
And they're like, I'm just going to steal this and put it right in and teach my sociology students or my history students or whatever how to do this, because it would improve my life so much by doing so. So that's kind of fun too.
Yeah, that's awesome. So one of the things that's a little bit different about your program than maybe modern education, there's people are like, how do you feel about this? But one of the things that you actually do is remove that responsibility from the children of having an inspiration of what to write, and you give them examples. So why did you think of that, and why is that such a powerful way to teach writing?
Well, it's kind of part of when I first saw Webster's system, I thought, this is like teaching music. So when we teach music, and I've used this analogy before, but we don't say to a kid, okay, come on in here, sit down at the piano. I'll teach you how to sit and how to push the keys, and I'll even teach you the names of the notes. But, there is one little rule here. You can't play anything that anyone else ever played. You have to kind of make it all up on your own. Just express yourself with the keyboard and, practice that 20, 30 minutes a day for the next 5 years. Well, what level of musicianship would we get? So in teaching music, we kind of do the opposite. Say, okay, you learn to play the piano, violin, whatever. Play this piece. Play it this way. Imitate me precisely. And then we go to something a little more complex and something a little more complex and do that for some time. And then on the foundation of basic skills, we can talk about the creative elements of interpretation or improvisation or composition. But when we discredit the importance of imitation in teaching a skill, we will see poor teaching of that skill. So when I saw the use of, source texts, and so here's a story, here's an Aesop fable, here's an article, here's some interesting information about a person or a place or an animal, and then make a little outline and retell that information. Everybody can do that. There's no, I don't know what to do. Mm-hmm. And then through our system and the 9 units, we gradually move from that dictated source text to a little less help source text where you have to work a little harder and ask a little harder questions, moving into writing from pictures, research where there's too much information and it's not necessarily organized in advance for you, all the way up to our unit 7, which is what we call inventive, or you could call it creative, but inventive writing. And so there's that long runway from the modeling and practicing of structure and style to, okay, now what would you like to tell about? Some experience you had, or some opinion, or something from your imagination or memory. And so with that runway, the students do so much better. And then Unit 8 is our essays, where they kind of have to combine, collect up information and tell what you think about that. Add your observations, analysis, opinion. Mm-hmm. So it's brilliantly well constructed. And, I don't take a huge amount of credit for designing the thing. I learned it from Dr. Webster in 1990, 91, 92. And I just kind of got good at teaching it. And of course, the more you do something, the more you can refine it and improve it over the years. So I find that it helps, especially the kids who are just frustrated by that blank page, but it also gives concrete techniques and tools to high aptitude kids who love writing. There's kids who, start writing their first book when they're 8.5 years old. Mm-hmm. And that's great, but they still also benefit from learning the structure and style tools.
Yeah. I mean, I think what is it? Picasso said, practice the basic skills, and that way you can act like an artist. So if both ends of the spectrum can benefit from knowing these things. And of course, I always say, music and sports and cooking are like the 3 areas where the classical model of education was never lost, because to be excellent or good or even enjoy any of those things, you have to use those tools of learning. And so it makes sense that you'd go from a musician or musical to seeing how this relates in writing and being able to be the powerhouse organization supporting families across the globe that you are today.
It reminds me, the very first article I ever wrote and published was called Why Music May Save the World, which was an allusion to Pablo Casals, who said at the United Nations, music will save the world. But my argument was exactly what you just said. You can deconstruct literature study, you can deconstruct history study, you can deconstruct art, but you can't really deconstruct music, because then it ceases to exist. Same thing with sports, which I know you can't just not have foundations, or you don't have a sport, you don't have competition, you don't have anything. So
one of the things that you like and are known for is your jokes. So do you just scour the internet for these, or do you wake up in the middle of the night and write them down? What is your inspiration with your humor?
Yeah, I can't say that the jokes I have made myself are on the higher zone of good jokes that I know. But most of us, when we were kids, we like to collect stuff, right? I collected seashells, and I collected stickers and Matchbox cars. And I guess I would say one of my hobbies then as an adult is I collect jokes, and then I look for opportunities to share jokes with people. When I record video classes, I pretty much always start with a joke when I go out and teach live classes. And there's something about humor that kind of just breaks the ice. And if people laugh or chuckle or smile, they kind of instantly become more teachable, more interested in what's going on. Mm-hmm. So I have worked to cultivate that ability to add humor to my teaching, and also try to inspire, other teachers and parents to bring in some of that humor and levity. A good joke kind of rings with intelligence. It kind of activates that higher part of your mind. Like you had to make a connection between two things that you didn't expect were going to be connected. And so there's kind of a healthy mental, tonic there with humor, I think.
Yeah, maybe you're building up some neural pathways or something.
But yeah, I will confess, I'm always on the lookout for another good joke. Would you like to hear my newest favorite joke?
Yes, I'd love to.
So a friend of mine was out hiking and he came to the edge of a canyon.
Okay.
And so he stood at the edge of the canyon and he shouted out, "Hello." And he heard back, "Well, that's original." You see, it was a sarcasm.
Sarcasm.
I just love that one. But that's kind of a new one, and pretty soon it'll be old, and I'll have to go find a new favorite one.
That's a good one. Yeah. And it helps with memory, right? Because you're always memorizing the joke as well.
Yeah, when I go and check in at the gym, there's always someone at the desk, and I swipe my little card, and there's about 3 girls that work there, and so I started just telling them a random joke now and then. Now they're always like, "Where's my joke?"
They're putting pressure on you. So, Andrew, as someone who's known you, you've always been a pretty fit guy, and as a dad, I've started putting on the weight. But I've noticed that you're looking trim lately. So, what has it been? Going to the gym, changing your diet? What are your weight loss secrets?
Well, it was the year 2000 was kind of good for me personally in many ways. I stopped traveling for an entire year. I didn't get on an airplane and go anywhere, and that was really weird.
2020.
Yep, 2020, and my hobby started to be cooking because my wife, she cooks for herself and I'm gone a lot. So I don't know. She's not cooking for me. The kids are all gone. So I started cooking and then I started studying a little bit better on nutrition.
Mm-hmm.
The first book I listened to was called Eat to Beat Disease by William Lee, MD. And I wasn't really fighting any particular disease, but I was noticing that people my age that I'm familiar with are kind of starting to get these kind of chronic type of degenerative diseases or older. Mm-hmm. And I just didn't want that. So, the first step was cooking much better food and then not traveling. So there's no airports, there's no hotels or restaurants, there's no junk food. Mm-hmm. The next thing, and this is kind of what really inspired me, is I was playing with my grandchildren one afternoon, and I just got this flash, like, I really want to see these kids grow up and be adults and have their own children. And then I thought, well, do the math. If I want to see these kids in their 20s, I need to live to my 80s. So what does that entail? So I started kind of on a super low carb, like not quite keto, but a low carb diet, eliminated all processed sugars and processed foods. And that was pretty easy to do because I was just, cooking at home. And so I could eat whatever I wanted to. And then I read a little bit about intermittent fasting. So I started to shrink my eating window. And so rather than eating 3 times a day with snacks, I shrank it down. And right now I pretty much eat all the food that I eat in a day within a 4 to 5 hour window. And, at first you kind of have to get used to being hungry at noon or 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock or whatever. But now it's just kind of a passing thing, like, oh, I'm hungry. It'll go away soon. And then I also was inspired by my son, who was a Challenge 4 student. He became a personal trainer at a gym nearby. And to try to kind of encourage him along that path, I promised that if he'd go get his certification, I would be his first paying client. So he started getting me on the resistance training. And I'll tell you, Robert, I hated it so much. I mean, the first 6-8 months going to the gym, I was just like, I hate this place. I'm always sore. The music is horrible. I hate it. But I kept my agreement. And I think after it was like 8 months, 10 months, somewhere in that zone, I got noise canceling earbuds. Yeah. And that helped with the bad music of the gym environment. And then just one day I was sitting in my office thinking, I'm done. I guess the thing I really want to do now is go to the gym. I'm like, who is this person? That is not a me that I've ever known. So it was kind of just a combination of all those things. But, I will say I feel better. I have better energy and mental clarity, and I sleep better really than I did 20 years ago when I was 40. So, I highly recommend don't wait too long to get into the kind of thinking about preserving good health and longevity. So my goal now is to die young at an old age.
Oh, yeah, I know my mom started to do some of those things because she had some health issues, nothing too major, but things that could be bad if they left unchecked. And I know she's doing a little bit of the keto lifestyle now, and she's trimmed up too quite a bit. So, and she said the same thing. She's got a lot more energy, which is of course scary for all of us here at Classical Conversations home office.
Definitely. When your mom gets energy, it's work for everyone, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's fun. So what's the best way to keep up with what you're doing on a day-to-day basis and stay connected with you for our audience members?
Well, I have a podcast. We've been doing it for almost 10 years. So there's a big backlog of episodes available. We post weekly, and it's called The Art of Language Podcast. So you can find that wherever quality podcasts are found. And then also our website, iew.com. We've got blogs and forums, and you can get on a mailing list and find out about events, both live or online, my speaking schedule at conventions and such forth. So all that's available and easy to find, iew.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you for being on the show today.
Thanks for having me, Robert. And you guys keep up the awesome work there at CC.
We appreciate it. God bless. Now I want to talk about our classical recap. And this is where we practice those 15 tools of learning and introduce some of these ideas of the trivium and how they were used in today's segment. In the 5 core habits of grammar, the repetition that builds knowledge, expressing. I love how expressive and descriptive Andrew is. Hearing him talk about his passion for music and developing a love of learning was so much fun. The 5 common topics of dialectic, the questions that develop understanding, and the tool of comparison. The connection that Andrew was able to make between learning the basics of music and learning the basics of writing have been a game changer for so many people. His ability to compare and identify the similarities between the two processes was what helped him arrive at that discovery. And finally, the 5 canons of rhetoric, the artifacts that demonstrate wisdom, and the tool of arrangement. Mr. Pudewa mentioned that he often begins his presentation with a joke. Every time he does this, he's practicing the classical tool of arrangement. Now let's practice these 15 tools of learning, looking at Christians and voting. And as we approach another year from another election year in most of the country, I thought it would be good to look at the idea of voting from a classical tools perspective. Did you know nearly 1/3 of Christians don't vote regularly? In many cases, only 10% of the entire population vote in the primary, which is a huge opportunity to make your vote count and make sure we are getting the best possible representation. One reason I hear from people that they don't vote is they don't feel like they are informed or haven't spent the time or made the time to become informed. So how can we make sure we can vote confidently? And using the 5 core habits of grammar and the tool of attending, which is differentiating the word from other known ideas. So we can attend by discovering what each candidate stands for. Do they want to use the force of government to impose these ideas, or let the marketplace of free ideas come up with the best solution? In the 5 common topics, we can use the tool of comparison, discovering similarities first and then differences. What do candidates have in common and where are they different? The tool of circumstance, what else is happening? Are the candidates concerned about the right things? And the 5 canons of rhetoric and style, choosing the best way to present those thoughts. You aren't likely to change the mind of the person on the opposite side of you, but your goal is to help to persuade the 10% in the middle. That is where races are won. So I'd like to challenge you to make sure you are registered to vote, and then remind people at your church or homeschool community to get registered. Then start using the 15 tools of learning to educate yourself and persuade others. And after the election, be sure to email, call, or even visit with your representative and let them know your perspective on the role of proper government and how they can best support you as your representative. After this commercial break, we will talk about diversified crypto portfolios with Will McCreary. I want you to know about Schoolhouse Rocked, the Homeschool Revolution. It is a feature-length documentary that will break down common misconceptions about homeschooling, empower new families to homeschool, and equip those already homeschooling to do it with excellence. The film follows host Yvette Hampton as she travels the country with her family, meeting other homeschoolers and educational experts, including yours truly, to learn the secrets of successfully homeschooling and tell the story of the millions of people who have been impacted by the homeschool revolution. To find out more, visit classicalconversations.com/rocked today.
Welcome to today's episode of Classical Crypto with Will. We're going to cover exchanges today. This is really important, especially if you're considering getting involved in crypto. An online crypto exchange is a platform in which you, the user, can connect a checking account to either indefinitely or temporarily fund it to buy crypto. Once you've connected your bank account to it, again, you can exchange or convert your dollars into crypto of your choosing. Once that conversion has taken place, you then own a digital asset. Let's say you converted $1,000 into Bitcoin. Usually after that conversion, your Bitcoin is held in what is called a digital wallet that lives on that exchange. Digital wallets are highly encrypted software that protect your asset, and because it protects your asset, right, they deemed it or called it a digital wallet for the imagery. So that is basically what an exchange is. Let's sum it up. It's a platform. You connect your bank account to it, purchase the crypto of your choosing. The exchange stores your crypto on a digital wallet. Now, the main objective of this episode is to lay out some options to what I consider to be the best exchanges or the better ones for users who might just now be getting into the space. I personally am not the biggest fan of Coinbase now for where I'm personally at in my trading and crypto holding quote unquote career, but it's probably the most popular and definitely the largest American exchange. It's very friendly for beginners. Coinbase is where I started 6 years ago. It's fairly easy to set up a new account and get started on it. Now, Coinbase is KYC. KYC is an acronym for Know Your Customer. This means you have to input data such as your name, residence, and other data you might have to give up if you set up a regular bank account. But once that's all done, you're good to go. Not all exchanges are like that. This is decentralized finance. A layer of self-sovereignty and protection is usually celebrated, so not all crypto exchanges have KYC. For some of them, you can sign up with just an email account. It really just depends on you and what your comfort level is. But once your Coinbase account is set up, you can exchange, convert dollars to crypto, or exchange one crypto for another crypto. Coinbase is very user-friendly, easy to navigate. For advanced traders, again, like I said, not the way to go, but I'm going to call Coinbase the Walmart of crypto for many of us who are just starting. Everyone knows about it. It's got broad and very basic functionality, which is the place to start. The second exchange that I'm going to recommend today is Crypto.com. You might have seen their big Super Bowl commercial with Matt Damon this past February. It's another large and very trusted exchange. It has some very notable features, many more than Coinbase. Crypto.com, though basic in nature, would remind you more of a traditional bank experience. Not only can you exchange dollars to crypto on it, you can also apply for a crypto debit card. This allows you to spend the crypto you earn. I really like the account layouts. It's easy to see how much you're earning, how much you have stored. You can earn interest on your holdings and even apply for lending if you wish. Like I said, it pretty much has the functionality of a bank. Now, day traders, swing traders, the serious guys, if you're more advanced yourself and you've done this for a while, you probably have one of these two accounts and you're going to want something else. But if you're starting, start here. I've said it this whole time, saying it again. This is a great place to learn how crypto works. Other exchanges to look into might be Kraken, Gemini, or KuCoin. They are a little bit more advanced, and if you've dabbled in Coinbase, you might want to look into one of those exchanges. We'll cover it in another episode, but a factor we touched on was earning interest, or in crypto terminology, staking rewards for using and storing your crypto on exchanges. That should also be factored in. And it's not like the bank giving you 0.01% interest on your money. These rates are usually 2 to 15% back on your crypto for storing it. I've earned a lot through staking crypto on exchanges. It's really a nice function. We will cover that soon.
Thanks for listening today. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, be sure to share it with a friend and check out our next episode dropping in a couple of weeks. God bless and have a great day.
Thank you for listening to Refining Rhetoric with Robert Bortons. Want more? Make sure to subscribe so you won't miss an episode. You can also follow us on social media to continue the conversation, and visit classicalconversations.com/rhetoric to find out how you can join a local homeschool community.